Good morning, or whatever the hell it is. Welcome to the Housing Revolution, Part 2, Chapter 2, Inflation in an Elastic Money Supply System. Hopefully you've watched yesterday's video, Inflation in a Fixed Money Supply Economic System, and now have a good understanding of how a fixed money supply strongly limits inflation, even that of land and housing. If you haven't yet seen that video, I suggest you watch it first, as well as the other videos in the Housing Revolution series. All right then. Back to our monthly budget example from yesterday. So you may remember yesterday's example in which your monthly after-tax income was fixed at $3,000 per month. At one point, you decided to get a new used car and your car payments would be $300 per month. Because your monthly after-tax income was fixed, you had to comb through your monthly budget to figure out which monthly expenditures to decrease in order to come up with that $300 monthly payment. So you got a new health insurance policy that was every bit as bad as the one you already had, but cost you $100 less every month. Then you decreased your monthly savings by $200 and voila, you were able to make your car payments. So in today's example, like yesterday's, you were going to get a new used car, but you instead go out and get a second side hustle for another $250 per month in after-tax income. Then you go out and get yet a third side hustle, good for another $100 per month in after-tax income. That extra $350 per month means not only can you make your car payments without having to cut back on any other expenditures in your monthly budget, but now you can splurge a bit and get that other model you really liked. You know, the one that had that spiffy new paint job. But then it hits you that if your landlord sees you driving around a car that looks brand new, she'll surely raise your rent. So you stick with the original model you wanted and put the extra $50 per month into savings. Similarly, if the money supply in a fixed money supply economy is somehow increased, prices in any section are then able to increase without any offsetting price or sales decreases in other sections of the economy. As the money supply has increased, many people now have a little more money than they previously had and are now able to spend more money in any section of the economy without having to spend less in other sections. This increase to the money supply allows price inflation to occur almost effortlessly, whereas the same price inflation in a fixed money supply system would be nearly impossible, as it must be offset by decreases in sales or prices elsewhere in the economy. So history has shown us an interesting phenomenon in fixed money supply economies. When a country's money supply somehow increased, prices would inflate accordingly. If a new haul of precious metals was discovered, or riches from another country were stolen or acquired through war or some agreement, prices would inflate as this increase to the fixed money supply started circulating throughout the economy. Just think about it. It's human nature to want to be compensated as much as possible for one's time, energy, and efforts, and sellers are therefore typically trying to sell their goods and services for as much as they can get without losing sales. Now, when the money supply is increased and there's more money floating around in the economy, sellers have more success charging higher prices because there is less resistance from buyers, as buyers who now have some of that money in their pockets can now pay more for some goods or services without having to spend less on other goods or services, without having to sacrifice other necessities or luxuries. You know, when you have a little extra money, you don't mind spending some of it. So economists even went so far as attempting to precisely quantify this phenomenon with the quantity theory of money. This theory states that general prices are directly proportional to the money supply, and that any increase in the money supply will inflate prices in direct proportion to that increase. Meaning, if the money supply increased by 5%, general prices would inflate by 5%. But economics is not the precise objective science that, say, physics, aka mechanics, the laws of our physical world, such as motion and momentum, are. With its infinite number of factors, many of which are very subjective, precise formulas don't work so well in economics. But suffice it to say that there is a predictable and observable, if not precisely quantifiable, relationship between inflation and the money supply, in which increases in the money supply do result in price inflation. All right, you've made it this far, and now we are getting to the good stuff. How does inflation act in an elastic money supply system such as ours? What are the limits of inflation in such a system? How do the inflationary effects of supply and demand differ in an elastic money supply system such as ours versus a fixed money supply system? Most importantly, how are your housing prices as well as housing supply and demand affected by an elastic money supply? In an elastic system, the money supply increases every time credit is extended and used. Now, in theory, the money supply then decreases as credit is paid off. But in a system such as ours, where credit is so accessible, even expected, the mere availability of credit acts as an increase to the money supply. Sellers know credit is available to many, if not most, of their potential customers, and they then set sales prices accordingly higher. This price inflation brought about by credit extensions typically remains in place even after these credit extensions are paid off, as new price standards based on customers' access to credit have now been set, and sellers are reluctant to sell for prices that are lower than the latest price standard. Knowing that credit is readily available to their customers, sellers know that they will be able to successfully make sales at these new higher prices, and quite possibly at even higher prices. So a sure way to deflate credit-induced inflation is to decrease the availability and usage of credit. The Fed used this strategy in the 80s, effectively decreasing the availability and usage of credit across the board by keeping interest rates high enough to discourage the use of credit. So by effectively constricting the money supply, the Fed's goal of decreasing inflation was reached in no uncertain terms, despite some very heavy collateral damage, something we will objectively scrutinize in a future video. But for our purposes here and now, suffice it to say the correlation between credit and inflation has been well documented. There is no doubt that the higher the availability of credit there is, and the more credit is extended and used, the more the money supply is increased, and as a result, the more prices inflate. Credit enables sellers to sell their products and services for higher prices. Think about it. Where would land and housing prices be without mortgages? There is absolutely no way land and housing prices could have inflated and hyperinflated to the obscene amounts they are today without mortgages. So, now that we understand the basic relationship between the money supply and inflation, we are one step closer to understanding that the inflationary effects of supply and demand are limited by the money supply or unleashed by the money supply. But we're going to leave that for tomorrow. Until tomorrow, take the next 24 hours to grasp how an elastic money supply enables price inflation. Then contemplate and contrast how the limits of price inflation differ in a fixed money supply system versus an elastic money supply system. The former severely limiting price inflation, the latter enabling price inflation. On tap next week with what will be your newfound understanding of our hyperinflationary mortgage system, and with your last week's new understanding of our unlimited feudalistic property laws, we're going to see loud and clearly how volatile the combination of these two factors is. We're going to see the widespread damage these two forces have wreaked, and we will have an undisputable understanding that in order to fix our dysfunctional housing system for the long term, in order to create a lasting, equitable, affordable, and functional housing system, we must effectively address both our unlimited feudalistic property laws and our hyperinflationary mortgage system. As we exboxtricate ourselves, we will begin to see the futility of acting only on the supply or the zoning or the NIMBYism, or enacting higher living wages and UBI strategies or getting government housing, etc., that we've been so obsessed with while in the depths of our complete indoctrination. As we begin to look at our entire land and housing system holistically from this new, higher, broader vantage point, we will see not only that the present sordid state of our land and housing system was inevitable, we will see how much worse it is going to get for ourselves and our children, grandchildren, and their progeny if we fail to transform the system by its deepest, most dysfunctional roots. It's also going to get worse and worse for our cats. But anyways, so yeah, folks, it is time for the housing revolution, the real housing revolution. And no, I'm not talking about a housing project for a lucky few. I'm not talking about higher wages or UBI that will help for a few months until your landlord raises your rent or sellers raise their prices accordingly. I'm not talking about increasing the supply of market inappropriate homes or increasing the supply of market appropriate homes that will just end up getting bought up by investors. We're going to take the system by its balls and make it grow a couple new ones, a couple that actually work for everyone. Instead of everyone working overtime for our dysfunctional land and housing system and the people profiteering off it, we're going to create and put into place a highly functioning, equitable, and affordable land and housing system that works for us. Yeah, no more of this feudalism shit. Are you with me? If you are, welcome to the housing revolution, the real housing revolution. And please share these videos, lick the bite button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the No Box Donations tab because it really helps with the YouTube algorithm, blah, blah, blah. All right, see you tomorrow. One more day of your favorite subject, economics. You got it in you? Over and out.